Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Scenic View podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Owens, Communications Director, along with Suzanne Beasley, the Government Relations Director at Scenic, and also our podcast producer, Sammy Cline. We are without our leader, our captain this week. We're going to try to get through without Artist Watkins. We are going to do our best to provide what we can for you guys this week. Let's get to it. So the biggest news this week from state government was one of the main leaders of state government will not be in his position next year. And I'm not talking about Hubert Davis at Carolina, the basketball coach. I was trying to make that analogy. It wasn't very clean. Yeah. Senate Leader Phil Berger has conceded his race to Sam Page.
That's right.
And it was I think it was like a 23 vote difference. He finally just decided to call off the recounts and concede. That is a huge earthquake for political junkies like us, right, Suzanne?
Yes. I'm not even sure how to feel right this moment because, Senator Berger has been around since I've been around. So, yeah, it's a huge change. The Senate, that's going to shift power in the Senate. And we've already heard some folks coming out publicly that want to, take that spot, become the president pro tem of the Senate. So Senator Ralph Heiss, obviously, Senator Michael Lee, and Senator Todd Johnson.
We'll get into that in a second, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about just how big of an impact this is going to be. He's been in the Senate for, 26 years?
Yep.
When you first heard that there was a primary challenger for him, did you even think this was possible, I guess?
No. I mean, it's Senator Berger, so no. But Sam Page is the sheriff in Rockingham County, and, everybody loves their sheriff. So, once he decided to run, he was going to have a bit of a formidable opponent in the primary. This is also, a perfect situation to say to people who think that their vote doesn't count. Right here is proof that your vote counts.
Yeah, at the end of the night on election night, it was 2 votes separating them.
Yes.
It spread out to 23, but that's just amazing. Yeah. And it kind of shows you the difference between state government, state politics in Raleigh and maybe local politics. A legislator is dragged into a fight locally. Maybe the issues change. I know that the casino thing was kind of a local issue down there up there, I guess. And
it was.
So like Senator Berger has his hands in all of the state politics. I mean, he is the leader of the city. He's probably the most powerful politician in the state.
Yes.
But it's amazing that a local issue like that can impact his race so much.
Yeah, it was interesting to witness this whole election all the way up through the recounts, and it's just going to be a huge change for the entire legislature, obviously for all of us who work there and for our state.
Yeah. So let's look at the folks who are in line to take his place. I saw a story from State Affairs today that said that Ralph Heiss is seeking to replace him. There's also a story about Michael Lee, I think, and Todd Johnson. It's interesting, though, because even though he lost a primary, he didn't lose a general election. Yeah. So it's not any kind of party change. I mean,
because that didn't change.
They're still going to have a majority, pretty much. I mean,
that didn't change. And, we kind of saw this through the elections. There were some Democrats in the House who had voted with the Republicans against Governor Stein's vetoes, and we saw them lose their seats. So, interestingly, across the board, there were some upsets that some you kind of saw coming. Some of them were like, okay.
I think the most interesting aspect of this is that we still have a short session, and Senator Berger will still be there, and I assume he'll still be in charge of the Senate, right?
Yes. And I expect Senator Berger will, he'll finish up his business as much as he can through this session and before he leaves, but it's going to be odd to go back in knowing that he's not coming back and knowing that we're fixing to have this big shift in power.
Do you think that it'll change any strategy for us at all? Or
definitely. I mean, we've got, these really new relationships.
Yeah.
So, we're gonna have to build, on whoever gets that position, whoever's elected by their caucus to lead them, we will have to work on our relationship with them, and obviously that will change the way we work with the Senate.
Can you see this being, I'm sorry, I'm grilling you with questions, but you're our expert this week, Suzanne. Do you see this being a shorter than usual short session?
I anticipate that they're going to be pretty quick. I mean, they can't campaign when they're in session. Lawmakers can't campaign when they're in session. So they kind of need to get in and get out. November will be here before you know it. So no dragging of the feet, which is good on one hand, but on the other hand, we want them to have time to actually craft and pass a budget.
Yeah.
We don't have a budget from the previous year. It's an election year, so they're going to need to look at something in whatever budget they do for the short session that makes up for what they didn't do last year, in order to leave a better feeling in people's hearts, so to say. So, I think they will come in and do business and go out. I could be completely wrong because it's the North Carolina legislature and, sometimes who knows. But, I think it'll be quick.
Another story that came out this week is the revenue projections for next year for 2027.
Yeah. So if the tax collections are over a certain amount of revenue, it triggers a decrease in the personal income tax. So we have an overcollection of $370 million, I believe the number was, which will trigger the decrease from 3.99 to 3.49 next year in the personal income tax. We're also looking at the next year of there being overcollection of taxes, which will trigger the next phase of personal income tax, which means less revenue for the state. And that just, goes right into what we talk about all the time. How are you going to fund services for taxpayers? We've still got a 23% vacancy rate here in North Carolina. How are you going to pay the people that you've got in order to keep them? How are you going to raise salaries enough that people want to come to work for the state? There's so many things to consider. And I did some reading on the actual document that's on the OSBM website, more weeds than I want to get into right now, but the infrastructure of our state is at issue here. And we hear all the time that North Carolina is the number one state for people to come and move to open new businesses. We hear this from agency heads who talk about, how this affects the services that they're able to provide. Secretary Marshall, she spoke in committee not too long ago and explained how we need to fund things appropriately because these are the services that are offered to those people who come to North Carolina to start new businesses. If you don't have an infrastructure that's properly funded, you're not going to attract people to come to our state. That sounds good on the surface. I mean, doesn't everybody want to pay less tax? But at the same time, we've got to consider how that's going to affect our state as a whole. It has an impact on everyone. So when you hit that, the pothole in the middle of the road and you're wondering where DOT is to fix your roads, and it's because they're not funded and there aren't enough people to do it. So lack of a budget, the impending lack of revenue, how all this plays into North Carolina remaining number one is important.
Yeah, so this story that I'm reading from WUNC says that with this reduction, the state would bring in $5.08 billion this year, but it would only bring in $34.72 billion during the next fiscal year. Yeah. Governor Stein said today's forecast means we will soon fall into a budget gap of at least $2.8 billion.
Yeah.
Causing the state to have to make painful cuts to critical services like public safety, education, and health care.
Yeah, there'll be no way around it.
So Speaker Hall, Destin Hall, his office said in a news release that the new numbers are increasing the chances of a significant recurring deficit, underscoring the need for a responsible budget. So that's maybe a little different than the Senate would say, right?
Definitely. And I mean, that's those hard lines between the Senate and, what the Senate wants and what the House wants. And Speaker Hall has held his line the whole time. So that trends with what he's been saying this entire last year of the budget or lack of a budget. There is that concern that, we're going to have a budget shortfall, and they do need to be responsible. All the things that I just talked about infrastructure, all of that suffers.
This is why it's important for our members to stand up for themselves, right? To be part of this discussion. And we have a lobby day on May 6th coming up. So we want everyone to come out and, make sure that they know that the jobs you do are important and need to be funded.
Exactly.
Right?
And we're looking forward to that day. It's not only a great day for us just to gather as a collective, and see each other and appreciate each other for the work that state employees and retirees have done, but it's also the opportunity to go visit lawmakers and deliver that message collectively so that they, hopefully will understand what's at stake here for North Carolinians. So we're looking forward to that. It's on May 6th. We're going to gather at 9 a.m. that morning at the state capitol. We'll hear from our officers and, artists obviously will speak to the group, and maybe there'll be a couple of VIPs who come and say hello, but then we'll make the walk over to the legislative building and start our grassroots advocacy day. So we're looking forward to that. If you're a state employee or retiree, come join us.
Yes. How does this projection maybe not change what your team will be fighting for down there, but maybe inform it? Does it change any ways you approach things or anything
Well,
like that?
always knowing what money you have or don't have is going to, fall into your conversation, because the question's always, well, how are we going to pay for that? So yeah, that will definitely play into our conversations about pay raises and COLA money, or, the lack of money being there to provide those kind of things for the people who keep the state running and who helped build this state into what it is today. So yeah, really important for those folks to come out and talk about that straight from them. It's one thing to see us. They see us all the time. They know who Scenic is, with the GR team on the ground over there. But when it's your constituents who are coming in the door with their concerns, that hits differently.
So anything else going on down at the legislature?
No, it's been kind of a quiet week this week. There's a couple of meetings next week. Just, oversight committees, those kind of things that are doing their required reporting. April 6th, there is session calendared. I'm not sure at this point if that's going to be a skeletal session. I anticipate that it is. The only thing that's listed on the calendar are some overrides that have not been addressed by the House yet. They may call the House back to address those before session starts, or they may do that when session convenes April 21st.
Oh, so this WUNC report also says that it talks about the state North Carolina is the only legislature in the country that didn't pass a budget last year. While a surplus figure represents a change in revenue projections, the lack of a budget means North Carolina has collected more than $2 billion more than it's spent under the current budget. So,
yeah.
we will definitely be wanting some of that money, right?
Exactly. There's money there. So
that's money that's been saved on the backs of our members, because they didn't get raises.
That's right. They didn't get raises. They've seen increases in the cost of their health care. The price of prescription drugs has skyrocketed. Everybody's feeling that effect. So, not having any adjustment to their income has made it even more difficult for them. So, yeah, we want some of that money for the working people of North Carolina.
It's only fair. And plus, obviously, like we've talked about already, the agencies are needing funding as well, especially like BAC.
That's right. And we're looking forward to probably closer when session meets, maybe in early May, having OSHR Director Stacey Meyer on to talk about the revamping of the State Human Resources Act.
Yeah.
How people are paid, and maybe that'll have some positive effects for state workers. We already have seen changes from session law back in the summer last year for hiring practices that make it easier for agencies to hire people. So that's headed in the right direction. But that'll be something that's on the table when session starts.
Okay. Let's turn to Sammy. Sammy, so you took a big trip and then you came back to work on Monday and you were sent to an even bigger trip. Goldsboro, North Carolina, for Cherry Hospital. But you said it was a pretty fun experience down there. What happened at our event at Cherry Hospital?
Yes. So they had, I think, 3 kind of long periods that they were out there. They fed they gave the night shift some snacks. And then I was there during the day shift, during their lunch, and there was so many members that came out. Everyone was really excited. Everyone was really friendly, very happy. It was a great event. It was a great turnout. So many volunteers from District 59.
So we're going to be getting out in the field a lot more, especially with the weather being nice. And that's always fun to see people. Anyone talking about the budget? Anything legislative wise to you? When am I getting a pay raise or anything like that?
there were some members who had some questions for Flint and Chris about that because they were also out there with us at the event.
Okay, cool. And
Yeah,
Suzanne, I saw you.
Flint Benson and Chris Haley are part of the government relations team, and they joined member relations yesterday for the event at Cherry Hospital, which is always a big event.
Yeah. And Suzanne, I saw you somewhere too. Where were you? You went to an event.
I went to Noble.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement. That was a really cool group of people. Great energy, a discussion about lots of different things. We had the opportunity to talk about things that affect them that they didn't even know affected them, as far as the retirement system and state health plan, if their locals are in that. But it was a across the state group of different law enforcement entities, from state troopers to the local police departments to sheriff's office to even some agency folks. Yeah, that was a good event.
Cool. I do have a follow-up to last week's question of the week topic for myself. Afroman beat the charges, and he did win his case. And he's now a phenomenon, right? He is everywhere. He's bigger than he was when he was popular.
So he went from 250,000 followers on TikTok when this case started, and he's now almost at 1 million.
Look, he's everywhere. My 81-year-old dad knew about it, y'all. My 81-year-old dad. So,
and you remember last week when I mentioned it, y'all were like, what? You didn't even know. And now it's everywhere. Right?
It is. Well, I immediately went home to check it out.
What's even funnier is that the Gen Zs were looking at it as like, oh, I forgot that he got raided in 2022. It's like, dude, you brought this back up with this case. We forgot.
Yeah, his American flag suit is now iconic. It's probably be in the Smithsonian at some point. But
my dad said this is proof that the Constitution is still alive.
My favorite part, well, there's a lot of parts, but my favorite part is the part where he shows the video of the sheriff looking at the lemon pound cake, and he don't even steal a piece.
Video in court.
Yeah, but the sheriff doesn't even steal a piece. He just looks at it, and that was enough for Afroman to make fun of it.
Crazy times.
I mean, he did look like he wanted to put his gun down and grab a slice.
I saw a meme that was, the whole Marco Rubio meme where he has every job.
Yeah.
They had one with him with the suit on, with the Afroman suit on the couch. That was pretty funny. So you guys are, I'm not saying emotional, but you've already admitted that y'all are maybe show a little more emotion than artists and maybe me. So I thought that this week's, is that a weird, you gave me a look, Suzanne. I don't know.
Did I? No, I meant that, yeah. No, not weird.
So I thought that I would try to tailor this week's question of the week for you two specifically.
John's wacky weird question of the week.
Now, what is the best moment in your life so far?
That's easy for me because I'm a GB. I'm a Grandma Beasley. The best part of my life was when Mia was born. She's my first grandbaby, and that, man, what an epic moment to see, your child holding his child. Just when did that happen? And then they added Livy to the mix. So yeah, the best in my life has been becoming a grandma.
Okay, so mine, I was going to say my daughter being born.
Yeah.
October 2012. I still remember the second that I saw her face and she looked at me and she was like, eh. She was so disappointed that I was her dad. But it's interesting that you say that because I would say that that's my daughter being born, but you say your grandkids are born.
Yeah.
Is that even bigger than your son being born?
It's not bigger. It's different, and it's part of it. I mean, Garrett is, Lord have mercy,
they're expansions of him.
They are. He's my heart walking outside of my body, and then he gifted me with these two beautiful, little girls that are an extension of him, like you just said, Sammy. So it's an increase of joy and love. It just makes it bigger. It just makes it bigger. I hope you see one day.
Well, I got something to look forward to. I guess.
Yes.
I was going to say the 2017 National Championship, but I guess I better say the No, I'm just kidding. Sammy, what is your best time of your life so far?
That's a hard one for me because I'm I don't have kids. I don't have a husband. I don't have any of that stuff. I'm
maybe that's it. Maybe Not having all that stuff
Being
is.
single.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world, is it, Sammy?
I will say that there's a lot to be said for that. Like the time from like 22 to 30.
Living joyfully in my 20s alone with just a dog. Because I'm starting to apparently make my friends jealous. And one of my friends who has had roommates since college, like she still lives with roommates, but she drove me to the airport for my trip. And the night before, she comes over, we're having a glass of wine, watching TV, and I'm just curled up on the couch. And she's like, see, you living like this, I am jealous. She's like, I want to be this happy being alone.
Yeah.
Because I'm extremely happy just being at my apartment, being like, I made myself a nice dinner. I watched a movie and had a glass of wine before going to bed.
Yeah.
We're introverts. That's how we recharge.
Yeah. I don't miss that time in my life, but it was fun. I will say that. Anything else to cover before we get out of here?
I don't
Besides
think
the
so.
pollen?
Yeah,
And you may have.
the great pollening.
It seems like it's worse now than it used to be. Am I right?
I feel like it was
So
on worse
this year, we were number 7. Raleigh was number 7 on the top 10 worst allergies in the country.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, because it seems like with development, we have less and less trees. Like, why is it happening worse now? So
the pine. It's the ragweed.
What is that?
Yeah.
Like the grass?
It's a hateful plant.
Mm-hmm.
We need like one big rain to wash it all away.
We do.
Right?
This is just gross, and it's not necessarily the yellow pollen that causes your allergies to act up. It's just the season that the yellow pollen falls. All the other stuff is falling at the same time too. But daggone if it doesn't make a mess.
It
on
does.
everything.
My car is green right now.
Yeah, it's just gross.
I saw that there was on Capitol Boulevard, there was one of the like Leaf Toyotas or something that was like, we're having our pollen sale. If our cars are covered in pollen, you get a discount. If our cars are green, then the prices are lean.
Oh, that's clever.
It was clever. Make something out of nothing.
And if you've heard a little difference in sound quality this week, we are doing this virtually this week because we couldn't get our makeshift studio. So hopefully it worked. If not, you will never hear this.
And we missed you, artists. We missed you, artists.
Yeah, definitely miss you, artists. We definitely need you back. Well, that's our show this week, and everyone have a great week.